Like the show is a big job, and I don't think it would be quite as doable as it is if it wasn't for Johnny and I teaming up and doing it together.
Yeah, you mentioned like the advantage of video. Skizz and I had the advantage of being in person.
That's what I was going to bring up. Like you guys, the delay, right? There's also that you guys have to deal with that Discord delay or whatever you're using or whatever, and the fact that you've been able to ebb and flow the way you have with that delay is very, very admirable. We take this for granted, Impulse.
Oh, for sure.
That we get to just be right here. We live 1,000 feet apart from each other, and really recording.
Yeah, dude, the dream.
Yeah.
The dream of being able to do a podcast in the same room as Joel. It's been 6 years.
Welcome back to the show. There's no telling where we'll go. So come and share a laugh on the Imp and Skizz podcast.
All right, Skizz, we are back in the studio, back at home, and we've got guests once again. Thanks for joining us. We've got Pixel Riffs, and we've got Joel, the host of the Spawn Chunks podcast. So this might be a podcast about podcasts.
It could very well. I mean, this is very. I'm excited about this one because we are literally talking to ourselves in another dimension. It's two people doing a collab podcast, and I get to get their insight on it. So, guys, thanks so much for giving us your time and being on the show.
Yeah, welcome.
A pleasure.
Welcome.
Of course. Yeah. This is the parallel universe in which one of you is Canadian and the other one is British. So I don't know how you feel about that, but yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here, guys.
Yeah, it's good to have you. I've had the pleasure of being on the Spawn Chunks as a guest and a fill-in for you, Pixel Riffs, when you were on vacation not too long ago. And it was absolute pleasure. It was kind of nice to see how you guys ran your show. You were very organized. You had a list of beats you wanted to hit during the show, and like they sent me a Word doc that I was able to kind of fill in during the week so that we knew like exactly what we're talking about. And I just remember like, oh, these guys really got it together. Like they know what they're doing. And then I look at them like, oh, well, they're up on episode 317. So I guess they've kind of figured it out along the way. But for those of you that are out there that don't know what the Spawn Chunks podcast is, why don't you guys fill our listeners in on what it is you guys do?
Sure. We have broken the podcast down over the years into essentially a few segments. So we start off with a quick login. Johnny and I talk about what we've been doing on the show or on our own Minecraft worlds for the week, kind of relevant to Minecraft kind of pop culture and what's happening in the space. Then we get into the news. Usually there's a snapshot and or announcement. Minecraft Live was recent, so we'll be talking about that for a few weeks, I'm sure. We have listener email that we go over. Sometimes that's responses to the previous episode. Sometimes it's just people have an idea or they have a question for us. And then we have a main
occasionally.
Yeah, grievance.
People got to air some grievances, like it's Festivus every day of the year.
Exactly. Or a death message that they'd like to share. And then at the end of the show, we have a main discussion, and that kind of flips around between like, what's the big thing happening in like the zeitgeist of Minecraft right now, or just something that either Johnny or I have just kind of decided that it's going to be poignant that week to talk about. Sometimes if a news drop is big enough, like recently the announcement at Minecraft Live, we'll just roll that into the main discussion and do like a full recap of Minecraft Live versus trying to fit that all into the news segment at the top of the show. We just let people know it's coming later so that they know that we're going to break up the news in those segments. But it's essentially like a weekly Minecraft news and editorial podcast, I think is what, succinctly it would be. To folks that don't know.
Wow, and you've been doing it for a long time. Like I said, you got 317 episodes doing it for every week, right? Have you guys ever missed
Monday?
Since 2018.
Holy cow, 2018. Wow. I was going to say, how long ago did that start?
Yeah.
And that started with the same idea, was that you were going to cover anything and everything Minecraft from the get-go, or was this something that evolved over time from maybe a different idea that you had?
It kind of sprung out fully formed, really. Like, and the genesis of this was Joel's existing podcasting career and him mentioning me on a podcast, tagging me in it on Twitter, and then I kind of said, well, I've not been on a podcast before. Do you want to actually like hang out and talk about Minecraft on Joel's other podcast, The Citadel Cafe? And from there, we instantly kind of hit it off. We had a good rapport. We decided, hey, when the next Minecraft update rolls out, which at the time was 1.13, the update Aquatic, which is kind of wild to think about now.
Wow.
We just thought, well, there's nobody else really doing a Minecraft podcast anymore. Like there were a few that had kind of lapsed as of like maybe 1.8 or something. Like nobody had really been doing anything for a while. And so we kind of took the existing formula Joel already had with the Citadel Cafe. You talk about the structure of our notes document. That was basically, we copy paste the Citadel Cafe show format and then just replace sci-fi and pop culture with Minecraft, and it was basically done. Like, wow. Obviously it's been refined a little bit, but I honestly think from day one we have not changed that much about that Google Doc that's just our show structure, right, Joel? Like, there's not really anything that's changed.
No, it's remained basically the same. I think as the audience grew and we started to get more email, the email section grew.
Yeah, like listener questions is definitely a bigger part of the show than it used to be, because we've grown immensely in our listener base. We couldn't include that much in episode 1 of the show, but obviously since then, it turns out people like to ask questions about this game like quite a lot. So we've had our fair share.
And I stole some of the format from the Daily Tech News Show. Tom Merritt has been a podcasting friend of mine for years, and he is extraordinarily good at what he does and been doing it for a very, very long time. And he does a tech news show. And I just thought, well, I could just take that format and just twist it to be Minecraft focused. And so kind of like the news rundown that we do at the top of the show, some of the quick kind of like hellos that we do, that kind of stuff was kind of borrowed from that, because we have the kind of the quick login on the Citadel Cafe, and that's more like, what have you been doing lately that's nerdy? Like that's not a TV or movie, but like something that's a little bit like a board game or a video game or just something kind of a book that you might be reading. And so that was taken from the Citadel Cafe, but we don't really have any news in the Citadel Cafe. Like I don't talk about the upcoming releases of movies or things like that. So I borrowed the news rundown from Daily Tech News Show, and then the rest of it was kind of naturally cobbled together from what I would expect a Minecraft podcast to be. And I don't remember when, Johnny, did we start off with the main discussion? It's hard now that it's been 6 years and 300 plus episodes to remember exactly how the first one was formatted.
Yeah, we kind of broke it down a little bit because Update Aquatic was new. We were talking about like bubbles and the drowned. Right. And it was almost back then split up kind of feature by feature. It was like, so episode 1, we're going to talk about like changes to water physics because that was what we had been working with at the time.
Right.
And then episode 2, I think maybe we went into our own like Minecraft backstory just to kind of give people a bit of an idea of what our careers had been up until that point in Minecraft. But then since then it was like, how do we feel about phantoms? How do we feel about the drowned? How do we feel about this or that? And now it feels like we don't do that as much anymore because it feels a little bit, I don't know, trite to go feature by feature on some of these new updates, but it feels a lot more organic now. It feels like, all right, what's in the air? What are people feeling about Minecraft? And like, what is relevant to our recent experience that we feel like sharing? So it's evolved slightly in that way, but yeah, generally speaking, it feels like the same podcast from day one, just with slightly better production quality and a few more listener questions.
Yeah. It sounds to me like you found a way to get more interaction with the community over time. Or like you said that you have emails that you read during the show, where obviously episode 1, 2, you probably didn't have that kind of back and forth communication or any kind of system established. How did that form? How did that come about? How were you able to start to involve your listeners more and more throughout week by week of developing this podcast?
We had a Patreon set up from day one, and one of the first things that we did was attach a Discord to that. So when people supported us on Patreon, they got access to the Discord, and that immediately started the conversation. And then from there, we were seeing emails, and at the time, pardon me, we only had the one email address, and that was what we were using for like business and signing up for services and things like that. And so we ultimately, the volume became a thing where like, okay, well, we have to create a second email address that's just for show email. And I feel like once we had one email on the show, it was just a matter of someone going like, oh, I can email the show and ask a question. I can contribute to this. And I think there's that early vibe that people get when it's like a brand new podcast and you go like, these guys are on episode 2. If I write in, there's a really good chance they're going to read it, and I might even make the show, because we're not dealing with a volume of email at that point. So, and then the snowball just kind of goes, and we have a lot of help with the email. I'll give a shout out to Cosmic Dancer, our rainbow email sheep of doom, that helps me with the filing and sorting of the email as it comes in and gets into different folders. It makes showtime and show prep a lot easier. Could not say enough about the help that I get from them.
That's awesome.
You know, something I heard that I really liked is they got one email we this is a point of contention that him and I go through all the time. We have like 3 or 4 emails, and we just I don't know how that happened all this time, but we have just the most ridiculous emails that
every time we came up with like a different thing that we did, we would create an email address. So there's like Naked and Scared. There's some other name that we thought we were going to use for the podcast, and we never ended up using it. We made an email address for that and registered a YouTube account, I think. And so like every time we go to log into stuff, we're like, which email?
Which one are we using?
So at some point in time, we need to figure out how to reel those in.
It's the minefield of internet branding, though. Like, you've got to camp the brand for a while until you got to let it cook until like this is the one that's like sticking in people's heads.
Yeah.
Like when we were coming up with the name for our show, we brainstormed a bunch of stuff, and it was a tricky one because so much Minecraft stuff already has good names. Like, I still stand by the idea that Mindcrack was the only good name for a Minecraft server ever, because it's a pun and it's also perfectly describes what Minecraft is. And from that point on, everybody else was just done. Like, there's no way. It's something craft or mine something, and that's all you get, right? Like, we've struggled so much to name podcasts over the years, and we ended up coming across the Spawn Chunks because we wanted to throw chunk in there, because at the time the most popular thing I'd done on my YouTube channel was a series of tutorials with builds in a single chunk and like time lapses of them getting built and like a step-by-step tutorial and stuff. So we thought it's got to be related to chunks somehow. We came across the Spawn Chunks as this idea of like, well, that's your home, right? On a Minecraft server or world, like regardless of whether you've actually built your spawn town there or whatever, that's like the important place and it's where you start. And so people may be searching for that anyway, but we weren't thinking search engine optimization. We were thinking vibes. We were thinking like, this place feels like your home base for all things Minecraft. And so like, maybe it's grown into that for some of our community. Maybe they just see us like as a stop on the way to whatever their kind of big projects are. But I think the show identity got formed quite early. And so we didn't have to do all of that searching around for like, what's the right branding for this, what email addresses do we need, what Twitter handles do we need. Part of the process of brainstorming a name for the show was also, is this available on social handles? Can we get the YouTube channel? Can we get the Twitter? And the Spawn Chunks was one of the first ones that really ticked all of those boxes for us, and so we just went with it. And I don't know, it seems to be pretty successul at this stage.
I love the name.
I do too. It's such a stellar name. It's just so fitting. It's so instantly memorable. Yeah. And it's just like, you just know what the show is going to be
I'll
about.
tell you what, I mean, you guys are very clever, because also you do that pre-show that's for your Patreon community, right? And you call it the render distance. I thought that was really clever too. Like, you're really good at coming up with names. They're very clever.
We jokingly refer to that because obviously we have a little chat in our Patreon like Discord before we hit record, and so we have like maybe like we'll talk about the weather or whatever, the kind of stuff that we want to get out of the way before we start recording the render distance. People have started calling that the lazy chunks, and so there's all these little like cute community names for everything that we didn't even come up with half the time. So yeah, like our community has like the same wavelength as us when it comes to like little jokey names for the segments and whatnot.
Well, awesome. So clearly they have proven themselves that their ability to name things is top shelf. Ours is not so much, and we've been thinking about rebranding. So right here, right now, go ahead and just tell us what our new name is.
Yeah, please. We're trying to come up with a new name for the Imp and Skizz podcast. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because after a year you start to get the itch to change something. Mainly me. Yeah. But
mainly you. But I'm still that way. But okay, so I want to talk about the differences in the shows, and the reason I want to do that is because when Impulse and I first met, and because we wanted to do our podcast, we were sort of all over the map. We even talked about, is this going to be a Minecraft-based pod? No, we're not going to do that. Is it? We can talk about it a little bit, and then we just decided, you know what? Anything's on the table. That's what it's going to be. We've done one about pen ownership. We've done leadership. We've done ghost stories. We've done inspirational stuff. We've just been all over the map. You guys chose to take a single track, and you're over 300 episodes, and you're very successful. I have to know, has it been difficult to take a single topic and just make it somehow unique and different and interesting every single episode? And what is the process that you two go through as a team to make sure that what you're going to be talking about is new and fresh, and what your approach is going to be for that particular episode?
I think one advantage is that because Minecraft is played by so many people, and because it is an ongoing updated game, there's almost always something to talk about. More so going forward with the new way that Minecraft is running out their development. But there were some times in previous updates where like the tail end of an update where people are not playing as much. They know new stuff is coming. So like, well, why am I going to play now? I'm going to wait until the new update comes out. We would also see kind of like less engagement, less listeners onto the podcast in those situations. Also, there'd be less news. There'd be these gaps sometimes. Before they started doing experimental features in the snapshots would just kind of like stop. And there'd be a few weeks after a release where there's really nothing happening. And it happens a lot faster now. Now it's only 2 weeks, maybe 4 before a new snapshot comes out, but it used to be 6 or longer. And that's when we would turn to the community, look for emails that we might be able to spin out into a full conversation. I know that sometimes Johnny and I have been back and forth like 15 minutes before showtime going like, what's the main discussion this week? Like, is there anything that you've had on your table for a while that we can fit in here that seems like it might fit? And those are usually the broader conversations. How do you approach like artist block or writer's block in Minecraft when you've got you want to play but you've got no ideas, and those are the kind of things we kind of save for when there is not a lot of news, there's not a lot of community conversation about certain topics. So that's the kind of thing that we try to fit in. But I think that as far as behind the scenes, like we do a pretty good 50-50 split. We do this thing, some people pick up on it, some people don't, but we kind of take turns hosting. So Johnny hosts the odd numbers and I host the even numbers. And we still end up talking about the same, but it's not like who leads the news, who moves the podcast forward. We do leave the wrap up the same just because it's a lot of information and it's better for both of us to just say the same thing every week. But when it comes to that co-hosting duty, it also sort of gives you the idea that, well, okay, I'm hosting this week. I should pop into the show notes and make sure the news is done. Vice versa, if it's Johnny hosting that week. And sometimes we just get busy. And if you wake up and you look in the show notes and it's like, oh, they're empty, I'll just add the news. And then that way they're there for the person when they log in. I tend to do the email more often because that tends to be something that's easy for me to parse. And so I'll pick the emails. And it's usually something I do last because then I can grab the emails based on what we're talking about that day, and maybe even grab an email that lines up, and maybe spins us or moves us into the main discussion. So I think that we've got a pretty decent 50-50 split. I don't remember Johnny too much talk early on. I think we both have decent work ethics, and because it was a partnership from the get-go, I think we both kind of took our strengths and said, okay, well, if you're good at the auto editing, then I'll do the website posting and the publishing because I've had experience with podcasting. So the workday is really split up quite evenly.
Yeah, definitely. Like I show up on Monday morning, like first cup of tea in hand, and go, what have I been doing in Minecraft that feels like it's a discussion? And if I've just got nothing, if I'm like on my third week of like, well, I'm building this one thing that I'm just trying to nail down and I've got no like momentum with it, we'll be like, okay, what's in the email inbox? Or I'll go to the Reddit even and go like, what are people talking about? Like try and get a bit of community kind of groundswell, like keep your ear to the ground a little bit and see if there's anything out there that people are talking about. Because sometimes they'll just be like, a redstone breakthrough has just happened. And Joel and I are both like moderately technical. We're not like the most innovative guys out there, but we can put together a redstone contraption. We can at least follow tutorials in a somewhat successful way. And then like that becomes the conversation topic. And then occasionally we have guests who can bring a lot more to the table on that front. And so we'll have people come in and talk about the redstone stuff and usually like correct us on what we've talked about 3 weeks earlier. And like I think we got a pretty good track record with that, though. I don't think we ended up with too many like controversies or things that the community like really came down on us for like misrepresenting. So I think we cover a range of stuff, and I think that's the thing is Minecraft has such range that it's possible to come up with something new to do for, Etho's been doing it for like 1,000 or whatever episodes of his Let's Play at this point. So we can do the same with a podcast week to week, and it's child's play at that point.
Speaking of a track record, I mean, you guys have been doing this weekly show for a very long time now. Do you find that cadence something that's difficult, or is it? Sounds like you have your schedule with getting up Monday morning and starting to put it all together. Has there ever been times where you were at risk of missing a week?
I mean, I find it gives me structure personally. Like, I can't speak for Joel, but like, I kind of relate to whenever we post the Hermitcraft recap on Sunday and everyone's like, great, okay, now I know it's Sunday because the Hermitcraft recap posted, because that's another project I have that is so regular that it's just part of my routine. And I don't know how much you guys feel this as people who, you've both, I think maybe fairly recently, like left your jobs for full-time YouTube. And I think maybe I was doing that even before you guys, even though my channel, I think, came a little bit after yours, Impulse. Like, I crave structure. I want to have a time when I can do something, and sometimes it feels better for things to be a bit more organic. When I'm recording Let's Play videos, like, I'm fine with the ideas just coming when they may. But the Spawn Chunks is such a structured show that having it every Monday at this time kind of adds to the structured nature of it, and it gives me something that I can kind of plan my day around. And I think that's a really crucial thing of being your own boss and working from home, is having that one thing you can rely on. That the Spawn Chunk starts my week, and I'm 100% fine with that. Like, it feels like something that I can wake up sleepy and still get done, because it feels robotic. It feels like the kind of thing that I can just do every Monday, and that helps with the process of it.
Yeah, so it begs the question, have you guys ever missed a week?
I think early on in the first year, we didn't miss, but we planned to take a couple weeks off over the holidays, like Christmas holidays.
Yeah.
And
these days we pre-record holiday episodes.
Yeah.
Like, the last few years we've done that.
That might have even been the last 5 years, or maybe the last 4, but certainly long enough that I can't remember when we started it. We just kind of dial in early on in December, do an all listener email show, do some sort of themed, discussion show, and record 4 episodes early in December so that we can have them ready to go and scheduled to publish on the 2 Mondays that happen, near Christmas and then between Christmas and New Year's. And then Johnny and I are usually pretty good to get back to work around like the 2nd or the 4th or whatever that first Monday is in January. So, we only take the 2 weeks, we'll say off, but we still have to pre-record everything. But since then, we've not missed a week, as far as I know. I don't even know if I've missed a recording for any reason.
I'm the one who, because my partner is American, I take 3-week vacations sometimes to go and visit their family, but Joel is still always here recording the podcast, and that's such a good feeling to know that you've got somebody that reliable who's always going to be there week on week. Even for the way we structured our Patreon up until now is that the show goes out and people are billed through Patreon on a per creation basis. So if we don't make a show, we don't get paid. It's not like a monthly subscription where they're paying the same thing every month. So I think that, if anything, has probably motivated us to keep producing week on week, because we're delivering stuff that people are paying for, and we don't get paid if we don't make it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the one nice thing about the way you've worked it out to where Johnny, you were able to take some time away was I got a chance to step in and host for you. So that was cool.
Yeah.
And I think you brought in
we get
Whip and a few others, right, as well. So that's nice.
I always call them the stunt pixel riffs for that week. It's they're the people who fill in. They have to put on the wig and the jumper and everything, and they're my doubles.
Do my best to fill in. You guys record pretty early. I think I remember okay, just please get rid of the morning voice before this recording hits, and that'll be good. But yeah, you guys are usually this is a little bit later in the day for recording time than you usually do, correct?
Yeah, normally for me it's a 10 a.m. recording, and for Johnny it's 2 p.m. And I'm in Atlantic, Canada, so I'm an hour ahead of New York. So what is that? 3 hours between you and I, Impulse, when you were on?
4.
Yeah, I think 4 actually.
Or is it 4 now?
Yeah, New York is 3.
It depends on when the jump and the time zones happen and all that kind of stuff. The daylight savings time. But yeah, so if we have any guests, Whip is even farther. He's on the West Coast. Yep. So for that episode, I believe I recorded later in the day. It was noon or 1 or something like that, because he just wasn't on the bed, that early in the morning. But I also didn't have to worry about getting into Johnny's dinner time, because Johnny was not on the show. So it works out really well for us, because I record in the mornings for me. I then have a lunch break. I then come back in and I do all the publishing. While I'm on the lunch break, Johnny's doing the editing. Then when Johnny's done with the editing, he's kind of outside of the video that happens later, he's just kind of washing his hands of it, goes to have dinner with his partner, and then I can do the publishing. And then I'm off to the gym usually by the end of my day. So it's a really good Monday. To your point earlier, Johnny, I love the fact that I can get up, I hit record at 10 a.m. I'm usually done between 4 and 5 at the latest. And it's a solid work day. I have one thing to do. And as an entrepreneur, someone that's worked from home for off and on for 20 years and full time for 10 plus, knowing what you're doing that day without any need to juggle anything around is fantastic. I really like the structure of just showing up on Monday morning, knowing that Monday is Spawn Chunks Day. I can worry about the rest of the week after. I can move things around after that. But Monday is just this immovable force. And I think too, starting off the week strong is really good. And I think that also helps us be consistent. Like when you get into like a Thursday or a Friday night podcast or later in the week, like things come up, you have to move things around, doctor's appointments come up, like all that kind of stuff. Monday morning, people just tend to not want to have that kind of stuff happen. So I find that's one of the other things that might have been behind keeping us so consistent, is just like starting off the week and just knowing that generally speaking, Mondays are usually pretty clear.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
So
that's something I'm taking notes on, because it is a good idea to, like, as the weekend's going, like figure out how you're going to kick off Monday. You guys obviously have it down because you have this scheduled every week. But like for me, every Monday morning, I find myself walking into the studio thinking, what am I going to do today? You know what I mean? Like I have my stream, but it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do after that half the time.
Yeah.
So it is kind of nice to, we started doing whiteboards, like writing a schedule up on a whiteboard. I was doing, the Google Calendar and stuff, but it's kind of nice to just always be able to just look over. And then there's just the going through the motion of writing something on a board. For some reason, it helps mentally, I think, as opposed to just doing something digital. So that's been something that both of us started doing recently. It's just like planning out our week ahead of time. And I think you're right. It's just when you're in this position, you're your own boss. Like it is nice to have a discipline and a schedule to where you can just lock in.
Well, see, for me, I had to because, and I wish I was more like you guys, all three of you, to be honest, because you actually do like structure. Johnny actually used the phrase that he craves structure. Joel, you love the structure. And me, I just, I hate this about myself, but I don't like structure. I don't like predictability. I for some reason, and probably, I worked in the tech industry for 2 decades, you know what I mean? So it was like, even though my jobs always came with every day was different because I was faced with new trials and stuff like that. So I had to be innovative to a certain degree. Just knowing what time I was going to have that meeting or what time that was structured enough to where I was like, my brain has such an aversion to structure and routine that it limits me. And what ends up happening is I end up double booking myself constantly. So that's why I ended up doing the board, was just to stop double booking myself.
And
but,
so you wouldn't forget things.
Yeah. Not forget, but you guys got it. You guys got it locked in. Let's talk about the working relationship. Let's get honest, guys. Let's get dirty, because you two are like it's like a match made in heaven. It really, like, you guys just work so well together, and just through what I'm listening to, there's a lot of just interlacing activities. Like, him and I, he's more tech oriented. I do all the editing. Like we just sort of found our yin yang instantly. I feel like you guys have that as well. Tell me about the working relationship between you guys.
I guess it started with that original conversation on the Citadel Cafe. Like it just started with us just hitting it off. Like I think I was still pretty early in my YouTube career, and I wasn't doing anything like full-time professionally. Like I was doing stuff on the side, but it was just nice to have somebody else to talk to who was like, I don't know, professional about it is a weird way to put it, I think, because there's a lot of people out there professionals, but like I was interested in the business of podcasting, but had no background in like starting something like that myself. Like all of the web design, all of the hosting, RSS feeds, all of that stuff, that was all outside of my wheelhouse. But I was fine with the audio and video editing side of things. So I was like, I'll produce something, but somebody else has to publish it for me. And that, I think, was probably the foundation of it, was that Joel had so much experience podcasting before this that it felt like that side of like running the business of the podcast kind of came naturally to you. And mine was a lot more like, I want to be the front line, the kind of the grunt work, like doing all of the on the ground editing kind of stuff. And then I pass it off to you, and you're the one who like puts it out in the cloud,
Yeah, I think that for me, it was the early Citadel Cafe podcast. And I think I had you back on. Like, I think I had you on twice. Because the first time was like, hey, let's just hang out. Because it was episode 261. I just looked it up. Pixel riffs and hockey sticks. And from there, I remember thinking like, that was really fun. We have a good rapport. I thought, because I was a fan of yours, Johnny, when I had you on the show. And so as I was continuing to watch and get to know Hermits and Hermitcraft, and then at the time, I think it was Decidedly Vanilla is what you were on.
Yeah, like that was season 4. That was
February 14th, 2018. Jeez. So that was a good 6 months ahead of when we started the Spawn Chunks. And I think I had you back on this summer. And I do remember thinking to myself, like, I had a pretty good rapport with Johnny. I'd like to do one more show just to make sure that isn't a fluke before I pitch the idea of doing the Spawn Chunks together, because I knew that I wanted to do a show.
That was me like proving that I was podcast material and not just some kind of fluke.
Walked into that one. And I think after that, like it just, like you said, it was that it's part luck. Like it's knowing after 10 plus years of podcasting what really works well with a co-host. Something that I noticed that we had a little bit going on, but I think just after the amount of time we've spent podcasting together, we don't step on one another all that often. Like it's about getting used to when someone else is done talking, whether you think they've got more to say on that topic, just the way that vocal inclinations work, the way that speech patterns, like that, it's just a groove you kind of fall into. And I think that in a way, the video has also helped with that. Like we can see one another when we're talking too, so you can tell when someone's smiling, they might have something funny to say. So you're going to let them, rather than just kind of keep on trucking, you're going to let them jump in on the news or whatever that happens to be. I think that's helpful too. But I think as far as the working relationship, like I think it's just been the transparency early on. Like I think, you can correct me, Johnny, but I think I remember pitching it as like 50-50 split, like right down the middle. We're just going to divvy up the duties. We'll always talk about it, make sure that it's not too much for either one. And I think also because your YouTube stuff was taking off and I still had other duties, like I was still doing graphic design and illustration work at the time. I had another couple of podcasts. I think I was still on Comics Coast to Coast at the time too. And so I just this can't take me more than today. Like it has to be like it'd be really nice if we can get it done in a Monday, and done in one production day, because my other challenges with the other shows that I was doing is that they would bleed over into other days. And then you end up doing that juggling thing that, I don't like with the work week. And so to have it all done in one day, Impulse, you asked earlier if we'd ever missed a week. The only time we've ever come close is when I have to do the recording and the production and everything on my own. Because then I'm doing the editing and I'm doing the publishing and all that kind of stuff. So it really is a 50-50 split. Like the show is a big job, and I don't think it would be quite as doable as it is if it wasn't for Johnny and I teaming up and doing it together.
Yeah, you mentioned like the advantage of video. Skizz and I had the advantage of being in person.
That's what I was going to bring up. Like you guys, the delay, right? There's also that you guys have to deal with that Discord delay or whatever you're using or whatever, and the fact that you've been able to ebb and flow the way you have with that delay is very, very admirable. We take this for granted, Impulse.
Oh, for sure.
That we get to just be right here. We live 1,000 feet apart from each other, and really recording.
Yeah, dude, the dream. Yeah. The dream of being able to do a podcast in the same room as Joel. It's been 6 years. Like, honestly, I was expecting us to do it much sooner because we started, like I said, in 2018. In 2020, Minecraft Festival was supposed to happen, right? Like, obviously before the pandemic and everything. We were thinking, well, we're probably going to be able to attend some like Minecraft conventions and events and do like a live stage show recording of the Spawn Chunks at some point, because at the time we were kind of the only Minecraft podcast out there. I think we're still the most consistent, I think. But yeah, I would have absolutely loved to just be like up on a stage and be like, Joel, I can shake your hand, like we can be in the same space, like we don't have to wait for the Discord delay. But that's something I think we've just fallen into a rhythm of, and it's predictable to us now because of how frequently we've done this. So I kind of know roughly, like Joel was saying earlier, the cadence of the voice, the speech patterns and stuff. I know when a sentence is coming to a natural conclusion and I can kind of step in. And I know Joel will probably have actually, in real time, finished talking a couple of seconds before that. So it won't be like I've interrupted him mid-sentence. And we just, I guess, have that rhythm now after 6 years of doing this.
See, that's what I find is funny, is that if you guys ever are in the same room, you're going to have to calibrate. You're going to end up talking over each other.
Yeah.
Add delay, yeah.
Got to dial it in.
You mentioned, like, so not only are you, apart from many time zones, but you were doing it audio only. This video aspect. You guys look great, by the way. I mean, your cameras are looking fantastic. I think, Joel, you just got a new camera, right?
I got a Sony's... Yeah, Sony ZV-E10. I picked that up about a month ago.
Yeah, it's awesome. So you guys were doing this all audio only, couldn't see each other's faces from across the world from each other with the Discord delay, and you were able to manage doing that. Tell me what's the process been like for you guys transitioning from the audio only aspect to video? What have you learned through The process of having to add video to the editing and the gear, of course, and anything else that's come along with that big change.
For me, the biggest adjustment has been the hiccups that you don't expect. One of the reasons I think we stuck with audio for so long, I'm a little camera shy, but then also don't rock the boat. Like, it was really working quite well. And we didn't have any hiccups. There was no audio hiccups. We both had good mics, like all that kind of stuff. And so to add video, it was a challenge in terms of getting it sorted out. I'm still working on things like lighting, studio, soundproofing, decor, that kind of stuff. But that is just an iterative process. As I have more money and more time to invest in the studio, I will. But the thing with video for me, I think the most frustrating part was the codecs and the different quality. You get a fancy new camera and it looks great on stream, but then your recording is all choppy. And you get this great big reveal. Hey, look, Joel in HD at 4 frames a second. It's kind of like, well, that's embarrassing. But you kind of have to take it in stride. And just like everything else, like if you go back and listen to our first Spawn Chunks, it's probably not going to be quite as smooth as the current versions. It's going to be a little bit of podcaster tennis, I like to call it, of Johnny and I going back and forth and trying to figure out, how the flow of the show is going to go. So the transition to video has to be an iterative process as well. You just have to roll with the punches and kind of sort it out over time. And I'm new to video production, so I had to learn a lot in a short period, but I do enjoy the engagement. Like, I feel like it's a better show, having gone back and watched a little bit of some of our YouTube videos now with both of us on camera. I think that it's a better presentation. I think that we just talked about it this morning, actually, with our patrons. We do a quarterly hangout where we run the numbers and talk about YouTube downloads and podcast downloads and all that kind of stuff and metrics. And Johnny, I don't remember the exact data, but essentially people are watching for longer periods now that we're both on camera on YouTube. And so that to me is a win. And that's a Joel, it's 2024. You're going to have to start podcasting on video. I know you're old school, but you'll have to just suck it up, right?
Yeah, like watch time is up from probably 16 to 18% to somewhere between 20 and 25% just because our faces are on screen.
Wow.
Like and it's the same thing with like YouTube thumbnails where everyone goes like, it's cheesy to put yourself like reacting in a thumbnail like in person or whatever, but like if you got a camera and it's representative of the video, there's no harm in it. And it's also like that's what people click on because they want to see people's faces, like they want to see a real person. And yeah, that's been part of that journey, has been getting used to our faces being on camera, having to do the thumbnails that involve our faces, which is easy enough. Like I just grab those from the video each time. But it's been an adjustment just in terms of the feel of the show. It's kept the same structure and it's kept everything, but it's also like, I have to take care of my appearance a little bit more if I'm appearing on camera even more regularly. And on stream, I've been using a camera for a while, but it's small and in the corner, and like this one cuts to me full frame in like full 1080p HD every time, and I go, oh, okay, like I'm suddenly very aware of like how my skin's looking today and like where all the spots and wrinkles are. But yeah, it's been a fun transition. I think it's been even prompted in part due to you guys' success and the fact that you guys have done video from the beginning of your show. And I know, Joel, you watched the Kelsey Brothers podcast, and that was a video thing, and that was one of the things that kind of prompted you to reconsider, should we be putting video in this? Because it makes for good shareable clips. It's obvious these guys are having a good time. Like, there's a lot of podcasts out there that if they weren't video already had been pivoting to video, and we just felt like we were kind of part of that trend, right?
Yeah, New Heights is the best example because of how engaging and how funny those brothers are. But it was, for me, I think several of the new podcasts I'm listening to were discovered on TikTok via video clips, where I wasn't catching them on YouTube. I wasn't seeing them any other place. I wasn't seeing links on Twitter or anything. I was just seeing these video clips on social media, Instagram and TikTok, and saying like, oh, the last 3 or 4 podcasts that I've discovered have been organically that way. The Spawn Chunks isn't doing that. We had experimented a little bit in the past with having like a screenshot of what we were talking about and then some audio and some captions over the audio only, but it's just not nearly as engaging. And I'll say, whenever I've come across something like that on TikTok, I tend to scroll right by. So, I mean, again, having the human face staring back at you and watching 2 people laugh or 2 people have an interesting discussion, a poignant moment in something in the news, whatever, it really does help drive people back to the show. So I definitely got the idea from New Heights, to try and push video into the Spawn Chunks. But then we've also kind of made it our own. It's really helpful too now that we've got the opportunity to do the video because when Johnny and I do our quick login, Johnny can toss up B-roll of screenshots that we've taken over the week about project that Johnny's working on in like the fantasy Minecraft SMP, or I can share pictures of my Moss Farm design and he can put those up on screen while we're talking, and it breaks up like the talking head news caster kind of vibe. Even when we read the news feed, Johnny will put up like a B-roll of the Minecraft.net article scrolling by so people can see, oh, well, there's an article that they've linked in their show notes that we can go read, and there's more information than just what's being given on the podcast. So I think the video does add a lot of value to it for the people that have the chance to watch it on YouTube, because you can still listen. Like obviously the podcast is still available for audio only for people that are on the go, listening in the car, on their way to work, whatever.
Are you guys finding that now that you're doing more video, because we have this too, where we know that there's a lot of people that are going to be listening to us on Spotify while they're on a run or a bike ride or whatever, but now we are supplementing a video experience. There's Skizz will pop up pictures and different things where it's like those people that are on their run listening are now like, oh, I want to know what they put on screen because we'll make a reference to it, and then they'll come back home and they'll load up YouTube, or we're now on Spotify video as well, and they'll try to go see what they missed visually. Are you guys finding any sort of issues or trying to kind of navigate those waters with those visuals that you're putting up? You seen any of that happening in your world?
Not really, because it hasn't changed a whole lot about the way we did the show before. We'd still put screenshots in the show notes, the stuff that goes up on the website, and it's really just me moving those screenshots into a place where people can see them. The structure of the show has stayed the same, and we're not typically like holding stuff up to show people like on camera. And so really it's just the same show but made with a video component. And I think the pivot to video didn't make us think, well, now we can do a bit where like we bring in the monitor and show you a video over here, or like we don't include video footage as anything else other than like context for the articles and what we're talking about in the quick login, because that adds production time for me and I just can't spend that time for the rest of the day. I feel like if we recorded the show like in game and we had like video footage of us just mining out like a massive area or something like that, some people would find that kind of stuff more compelling. But then for Joel and I, it would just be a distraction. It would be a distraction from what we were talking about. And so we kind of nixed that idea fairly early. And I like the fact, if anything, that the video version of the podcast doesn't have too much like moving footage and too many extra parts, both because it's easier for me to edit and also because it feels less distracting for the viewer or the listener. So you're not required to watch the podcast. You're not going to be missing anything out from that. We're not doing skits, you know? Like we're keeping it like fairly audio based, even though the video component is there now.
Yeah, there's something in listening to your episode. You guys are very, very human. I don't know why I'm coming up with that word, but you guys are very human in your approach to Minecraft. But it's this great dynamic of really having high acumen in what you're talking about. It's very obvious that you guys do your homework before you put things on as item lists and what you're going to talk about. But you bring such a human aspect to it that what you're saying completely tallies right now, because specifically you guys were talking about at one point, I don't remember which one of you it was, but talking about when you first saw people using signs as like fence gates, like something to that effect. They were using... You talked about your moment in realizing that they were using hanging signs as fence gates. And what you were doing in that moment was you were talking about how we design things is so subjective, and it's in the eye of the beholder, but it's so much fun to watch these new revelations, because you were talking about Satisfactory a little bit at that time, but you were talking about you're like, this transfers into Minecraft as well. And I realized these guys are like, they're making sure that the things they're talking about, they know what they're talking about, but they're bringing such a human aspect to it in regards to, I can still be wowed by this game by the simplest things. You know what I mean? And I really, really enjoyed that, because you were driving home what makes Minecraft so magical is that it's just this never ending pit of awesomeness that we can just continue to explore. And as soon as you think that you've gotten to the bottom of it, somebody uses a hanging sign as a fence post, you know what I mean? Or a fence gate. And that's when you're just like, well, this is something special, man. And so what is it that Minecraft can do for you? And what I mean by that is him and I are lucky enough to where just life in general is on the table for things to talk about, right? But you guys have chosen just Minecraft, right? So is it specifically massive updates? Is it snapshots? Is it Minecraft-based events? What is it that Minecraft does when you guys are like, oh, the next several weeks of our life is going to be easy?
I mean, Minecraft Live helps, announcing the new content, having that stuff be put into snapshots. So like generally we have like a recap of Minecraft Live. We'll have either some speculation, which we won't have because we now have a snapshot with some of the content from Minecraft Live in it to mess around with an experimental snapshot. So the next show will be hopefully Johnny and I talking about hands-on first impressions. Did you use the pale oak? What did you think? Does it work with this? Does it work with that? Like there's only so much you can tell from a developer preview and screenshots and stuff, right? And so we'll have some hands-on there. We will probably get some feedback from the community over the next couple weeks on the snapshots as well. And so that will be probably another week. We should mention also that, because of the number of people that support us on Patreon, we've turned one of our episodes each week into an all email episode. So we forego the main discussion. And instead of 1 or 2 emails, we read like 3 or 4. And that kind of helps fill in. So we'll plan that. And we've moved that around too. Like normally it's the 3rd Monday of the month. But if the 3rd Monday of the month is a massive news drop, we'll bump the chunk mail dispenser to the end of the month so that we can say, oh, we'll save those emails because we might not only just be more poignant with talking about the news this week, we may also have more email to choose from for the next week if we have people writing in about this thing that just dropped. So we can move it around a little bit to get the most out of it. But I think that's when Minecraft does big announcements. That's when I think, okay, well, we've got lots to talk about on Monday. We might not even get through it all. We might have to parse it out. And that's usually, I think, when it's not easy street, but it's certainly like I no longer have to hunt for something to talk about for the next couple of weeks because I know between my experience with the new update and talking about the community and what's happening with the new update, that'll cover a lot of ground. I mean, Johnny, do you have anything for you that happens in Minecraft where you're like, sweet, I can now talk about this for weeks?
It's just when inspiration strikes. Like going back to what Skizz was saying about us bringing the human side to it. Like you're an artist. Like Joel is a visual artist by training. Your schooling is in that, and so you're great at interpreting Minecraft blocks as something they're not, which is crucial to understanding why that sense of wonder can perpetuate throughout the game forever. We had a guy really early in the show, I think it's like episode 43, we had a guy called Adam Clark on who used to work with Stampy a lot, his Wizard Keen character. He's like a Minecraft educator, and he said that like a lot of the time if adults can't grasp what Minecraft is, it's because they look at this blocky world and all they see is a series of cubes and they're just looking at the geometry of things and thinking that doesn't look very realistic, and they don't allow it in. They kind of put up a wall against that stuff. And the trick to understanding Minecraft is to think of the world like digital clay and something that can be molded, and to look at the bigger picture of things. So you're not just seeing a collection of blocks, you're seeing a landscape. Like you're allowing your brain to interpret that stuff. And that's where Minecraft is just a gold mine of constant inspiration and constant creativity. And that's something that fortunately, even though I don't have much of a training in visual art, came to me relatively naturally. And I think it comes to Joel naturally, both, for the same reasons, but also because of like more of an artistic background. And I think that's what allows us to keep talking about the same things, but in different ways, I suppose. And Joel and I are naturally both like fairly, I want to say cerebral people. Like we're both, not to toot our own horns, relatively smart. And so like the philosophy of Minecraft is something that we can get into, like the reasons why we feel like, the orange logs don't go super well with the white logs, even though they should be like side by side. White's like a more neutral color, but there's like a little bit of pink in this and it's kind of clashing. And like we can go that fine-tuned kind of minutia of the stuff that we see in game, but we can also zoom out and look at the bigger picture and decide like what we find beautiful about new additions to the game and new biomes. And I think the community is having the same discussion alongside us. Even the folks in our Discord, we have a chat running alongside the main chats where people are discussing snapshots, people are sharing stuff that they built in their bases, people are constantly talking about, redstone innovations and mods and that kind of thing. And seeing that level of community discussion around topics that Joel and I would not normally even have on our radar again, allows us to be so much more holistic and creative about the way we look at this game. And that's one of the things that's kept me playing Minecraft for 10 years, is every time something new gets added, it adds so many possibilities to do stuff that you hadn't thought of before.
Yes, dude.
Yeah.
Yes. They could add one more block, and they added hundreds of more blocks. Because it's like, it's amazing how if you just do it right, and I'm not very good at this, but anytime I can pull off a little something, I feel this huge sense of accomplishment. So just me in my shop putting a magma block behind a mangrove root, and the magma light coming through the root veins created a whole new block that doesn't exist. You know what I mean? So it's like those little things right there. It's your apps, and when you move left to right, the block comes alive. Yeah. So it's just like things like that like I don't have that artistic touch. I don't have what some people are very natural at, but anytime I'm able to pull something off like that, it feels like a huge accomplishment. Then there's people doing things that they explain it to me, and I'm like, oh, I don't even know what you're saying. Like Scar did something to where I still don't understand it. He used like mud block behind glass, because mud blocks are a little bit smaller, but it was something specific about how it was interacting with the sunlight. So the sunlight was coming down and putting like a halo around the glass. And so from a distance, it looks like an office building window. And I'm just like, I don't think I ever would have been able to think of something like that. But you're absolutely right. There's so much there. So when they bring new things, it cracks open a whole list of opportunities for me. Yeah.
And now with them announcing that they're going to do releases in more of these drops fashion, that's got to be pretty exciting for you guys in the way your show works, because you're going to get a lot more to talk about a lot more often.
Yep.
Right. Instead of just like every 6 months, there's this big list of things to talk about. Now, maybe once a month or so. I don't know how often they're going to do the drops, but every once in a while, you're going to get a little new thing to talk about. And they just released that snapshot on Wednesday. I'm sure you both were probably busy messing around with the beating heart block and what that mob does and all that kind of stuff. And so that's going to give you some fodder on your show to talk about next week. And that's got to be very exciting. And I think it's exciting for the community too, because we all went through this kind of lull, right? When they made their transition, when Microsoft first bought Mojang, they had to figure out how to work together, right? Obviously, there was going to be more focus on Bedrock and getting more of the, tying the two together to make sure that they're in lockstep. And that is going to take a lot of effort from a lot of different people. And so that slowed down the process of us getting new things for quite some time. And I can't imagine how difficult those weeks and months must have been for your show, when there was really nothing new happening in the Minecraft world. But now you're going to get that a lot more and a lot more often. So that's got to be very exciting, I assume.
I think that the cadence of the drops is going to help our show for the news cycle. But I think also the conversation will change, because a lot of times there's a little bit of burnout that happens when you've been talking about a feature for a really long time and it's been in snapshots and you've seen it slowly rolled out. And then there's either a wait while it's being bug tested and eventually makes it into the main vanilla game. But then when it does get there, because you've been talking about it for 3 or 4 months, it doesn't feel new anymore, at least to us. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to be super excited about the new thing coming to 1.21. So for example, the trial chambers. Like, we talked about trial chambers for months before they were actually in the game. And so it was kind of hard to be like, yay, day one, they're here. It's like, we've been talking about them for months. But I feel like now, because of the way that they're going to be doing things, because they don't need to announce things so far in advance because they're not as big, we won't be talking about it for as long. So we'll be able to talk about something for a couple of weeks, and then it might be in snapshots, and it might be in the game within a couple of months. We don't know yet. We'll know more as they start to do a couple of those, and maybe we'll get kind of an idea, okay, this is going to happen every 2 to 3 months, or maybe it's going to happen every 4 to 6 months, who knows. But once we get a feel for that, we can kind of like gauge our engagement around that, and kind of like steer the conversation to be like geared up as it's about to drop. And so we can talk about what's happening a little bit more relevant, I think, that to just reading snapshot notes, week after week. It'll be fun to have hands-on a lot sooner. Mm-hmm.
And if all else fails, we can just have me go back to talking about bundles, which I've been talking about for 3 years already, and I will not shut up. So you can't make me. You can color code them now. Incredible.
You're like the only champion of bundles I know.
You know what?
I'm a bundle evangelist.
Yeah, and I appreciated your bundle segment because it was the first time I'm like, you know what? I might give these a go because I've tried them before, and the whole time I tried bundles, I'm like, what? This makes no. How is there any value? And then I would ask other people, and they're like, no, it's a pile of junk. But then Pix talks about it, and I'm like, he's making some sense here, man.
Yeah.
Like I think I think you nailed it in regards to. I just don't think people really fully understand it. You know what I mean? And I almost wanted to jump into the podcast. You talked about had they sort of announced the value of the bundle better early on, maybe we'd see a different world here. And I remember thinking, like, if I had to guess, the reason they didn't go into the value is because they probably thought organically the public is going to do what it does and it's going to discover the value and it's just going to happen. But for some reason, bundles just didn't pick up steam. So we have our bundle advocate. Yeah. We got Pixel Riffs here who is just marching down the street with his picket signs, bundles forever. And it makes me want to dive in and find out what he feels with them.
I think this is a good part to say that we've been talking a lot about the Spawn Chunks. We've been talking about what you guys do on Mondays. But individually, you both are content creators doing many other things. And as Skizz was just talking, Pixel Riffs, one of the things that you've done for many, many years now is your survival guide, which is it's a really cool concept I found because it's not just you doing a tutorial in a tutorial sense on YouTube. It's you doing a Let's Play that's also very informative. So you've kind of like given an entertainment value to the way that you are giving out information. And so I can imagine you've probably got a whole survival guide episode on the proper way to use bundles.
Dude, like a whole week. It's gonna be bundles week in the survival guide when that starts, man. Like, not even kidding. Like, I have so many ideas, and yeah, like survival guide has been kind of my bread and butter for the same duration actually as the podcast, because it started with 1.13, the update Aquatics. So basically the same week we launched the podcast, I launched the Minecraft Survival Guide. Was still a small channel, but that's kind of the thing that has become my major success on YouTube. So yeah, that's kind of part of my whole YouTube identity. Really,
did you just call a channel with 971,000 subscribers a small channel?
I mean, it was a small channel when it started. The 971,000 subscribers is because of the survival guide, is what I mean.
Gotcha.
Like, mostly because of one video where I raided a woodland mansion that is still the most popular video on my channel. I have no idea why. I even missed the fact that there was a secret room behind the wool face at the top of the stairs.
Driving you nuts to this day.
That's probably why it's so successful, is everybody queuing up to leave that comment on a 5-year-old video at this point.
Yeah, so that's fantastic. Well, congratulations on the success of your channel, and hopefully you'll see that million soon and get that gold plaque. That's got to be super exciting. Also, you've been really busy and consistent as well with the Hermitcraft recap that you do with Zloy.
Yeah, you just like glossed over it earlier. I kind of want to dive into that and just those Okay, I'm finally going to get some answers. How are you guys pulling this off? Because I barely have time to watch like my own videos. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, they're watching every video that released. They're ingesting it, and then they're putting together this gorgeous recap that's very structured. My brain goes into all the time it took just to watch the videos. So what is the approach? How are you guys pulling this off? It makes no sense.
So it helps, as with the Spawn Chunks podcast, it helps to have a partner, like a partner in crime, depending on what your opinion on fair use is, I guess. But yeah, we've been doing the recap for even longer than I've been doing the podcast or the survival guide. It started back when Decidedly Vanilla, my previous like multiplayer series, was in season 2. Zloy joined the server having met one of the other guys from the Decidedly Vanilla group, and he said, hey, I'm taking over this thing called the Hermitcraft recap. And the team that was writing it at the time was like a lot of people, and it was like a too many cooks kind of situation where nobody could quite agree on an approach. This was my understanding of it as an outsider, so like on the record, forgive me if any of this is inaccurate. But he basically said like they're interested in trying to make this team smaller and just having me and one other person do it. And Zloy is Russian, and he doesn't have he at the time especially didn't have a particularly confident English speaking voice. And so he said, I need somebody at least to do the voiceover. I'll do all of the writing, and then I'll hand you the script, you can do the voiceover. Since then, it's become much more of a collaborative thing where the pair of us divide up all of the hermits between us. There are like 26 or something of you guys, so we do 13 each. And then like he'll watch one half of the videos, I'll watch the other half of the videos. Most of the time we watch them at like YouTube 2 times speed so that we can watch it all faster. And I've gotten really good at understanding most people at 2.5 times speed or like 3 times speed if you can get the like browser plugin that lets you go faster than YouTube will allow you. So it's really weird hearing you guys talk at a normal speed. Can I just say, because like right now I feel like this should be twice as fast. But then yeah, we take notes. YouTube has that great feature where if you right click on the video player, it has a list of other stuff it can do that nobody really looks at. And so you can loop a video there if you want to. And there's a great function that lets you export like a shared link for the video, but with a specific time code to the point in the video you're paused at. And so we use that to take notes for like, this is where clips should go of like stuff that's relevant to what we're talking about in the script. And so I generate basically like a bunch of those for myself, and like little things where I've got like a joke that I've written about something that I thought was funny, or like just something significant happens in the video that I think this is a milestone achievement that we need to, or somebody finishes a build, or like there's a cool time-lapse segment here, or like, you know, really cool, funny like collab moment happens between Skizz and Impulse. And then we have a list of those. We sit down every Saturday, write the script, and then it's almost the reverse of what happens with the Spawn Chunks, where I record the voiceover, I send it to Zloy. Zloy does all the editing and publishes it. And so, yeah, like that's been our working relationship for longer than I've been doing the podcast. So like upwards of, I think we're probably on year 7 or 8. We've been doing it since the middle of season 4 of Hermitcraft. So that's like 7 seasons we've basically covered at this stage.
That's insane.
And now anytime I have a longer episode come out, I'm going to feel bad.
Yeah, you should feel bad if you are Doc M77, who put out 110 minutes worth of footage.
Which one of you drew Doc's name? Was it you or Zloy?
I watched Doc. I watched Doc. So yeah, no, and it's a delight. Yeah, it's really fun. Decked Out was a really interesting time for us because it was a lot of people all making progress in the same thing. And we had to find the highlights of a lot of people effectively running the same game over and over again, which is very different to what Minecraft is. The reason the Hermitcraft recap can even exist is because everybody on Hermitcraft is doing something different. And while we obviously don't want to stand in for the Hermit's videos and be something that you watch instead of Hermitcraft, everybody in the community recognizes how difficult it is to watch all 26 of you, or however many there are total. And so we want to make sure that people have context if they can only watch like a couple of people, if they can just watch you guys, or if they just watch Gemini Tay or Zombie Cleo, like they can have something to put in context what the heck is going on when one of you visits Iskal's base and he's talking about hermit challenges or whatever else, right? Like there's so many little things going on that we can catch that not everybody else can, because A, we've got the time, and B, we watch them at 3 times speed. So there's like little tricks that we picked up along the way, but it's fun because it's a creative writing exercise at the end of the day. Like we try and find little ways of, even when it feels like another thing that I do week on week and another thing that feels like very routine, we make it fun for ourselves. This week, because Impulse, your build with the sewer system has the Ninja Turtles in it, here's an Easter egg for you. If you listen to Impulse's segment of the script, I've tried to write in as many references to Ninja Turtles, like movies and video game, like sequel titles and stuff, as I possibly can. See how many you can pick out. There's at least 4.
That's fantastic.
We do stuff like that all the time. Like I'm pretty sure we've written like a ton of Linkin Park song titles into a paragraph every so often.
Come on.
Yeah, like we try and find like ways to make it like goofy little games for ourselves while we're doing it, whilst also finding the things that unite everything on Hermitcraft, like the connecting thread that links everything together so the script flows well and feels kind of seamless.
It's a fantastic idea for a...
It's an art at this point. Yeah.
I think not only does the community appreciate it, because I see a lot of Reddit posts where it's like, "Hi, I'm new to Hermitcraft and I don't know who to start watching." And
where the heck do I start?
And a lot of people will say, "Well, just watch the Hermitcraft recap, and you'll get an idea of what everybody's up to and what their vibe is, and then you can kind of choose from there." There's also like answer 20 questions about what you like about Minecraft and will lead you to a hermit. There's those tools out there as well, but I think the recap really does give a much more personable approach to figuring out which hermits you might want to start watching. So from a marketing standpoint, it's appreciated not only by the viewers, but I think Hermitcraft as well, of like getting our names out there and getting us in front of people in a more bite-sized way that they can consume. So I think it's a fantastic idea. I'm glad that you guys are still doing it. Obviously, you know, like Skizz and I are both in awe of like how, because how could that must be a ton of time. How could you continue to do this after, you know, 7 years or however long it's been? It's crazy, but it's a really good product that you guys are putting together. So huge props to that. Huge props to continuing to work on that after so many years. And I just think it's absolutely great. Joel, I want to get to you as well, because you mentioned you've been in the podcast game for 7+ years. And we've been talking about Spawn Chunk's been talking about the Citadel, but it didn't start there for you. In fact, I'd like you to kind of give your history on like when did you get into podcasting in the first place and why?
So the very first thing I did in podcasting was sending segments into StarCast, which was a StarCraft 2 podcast. Garrett Weinzierl and Kyle Ferguson were putting that together. I don't even know when, before 2012. So probably close to 15 years ago. And eventually I decided to try my hand at my own. It's no longer around. It only lasted until 2012. And that was the Dating Digital podcast. So I did a podcast about online dating with co-host Laura. And we did that for a couple of years. It was monthly, if I recall. And that kind of got me into it. I then started the Citadel Cafe in, I think it was 2011. And so that just started as an excuse for myself and some of my guy friends to just hang around and talk about the stuff that we normally talk about. But they had new spouses and new babies and could not get out for beer, you know, and to talk about this kind of stuff in person. And so getting them into podcasting was an easy thing. You know, like I said, look, you know, if you guys invest just a little bit in a microphone, I can handle all the production and the editing. We'll just call each other once a week. And it was myself, my buddy Peyton, and Chad. And we just did the same thing. You know, we talked about the latest Star Wars movie or then Game of Thrones and Marvel, like whatever was happening. That's what we talked about. And so I started doing that in 2011. So we've got over 400 episodes of that, and now coming up on 13 years altogether. And throughout that time span, I also became friends with some of the folks over at the podcasting network, the Frog Pants Podcasting Network. And I was on Comics Coast to Coast for years as well. I want to say that started around 2012 or 2011. And then I stayed on that basically, I think, until the Spawn Chunks really took off. Because I couldn't float 3 podcasts. Like I could only do the 2. And I was line producing on Comics Coast to Coast. So I was the one emailing comic guests. We were interviewing an artist every week. And so we had to find one, we had to email them, we had to schedule ahead of time. So I was very often talking to 3 and 4 artists at a time, figuring out where to leapfrog them in the production and how to get them on the show. And so I really had a lot of hours on podcasting before I even started the Spawn Chunks with Johnny. And I love it. It's been a really fun adventure from side hustle hobby to this is going to help me with my comics career. Like at the time when I was doing Comics Coast to Coast, I was drawing a web comic. You know, I've published a comic book collection of comic strips. And so helping promote that and talking with other artists and networking and stuff. I ended up meeting some people when I visited Utah to go to podcasting conventions and meeting some of the artists that I actually interviewed on the shows. It was really, really cool. So having all that kind of start and then transition now into it's the bulk of what I do, you know, like content creation and podcasting is my job now. And it was a really cool transition to kind of take that from hobby to side hustle to now full-time career. And it's one of those things that it's like everything else. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I feel like I was able to work with Johnny and hash out the idea for the Spawn Chunks as efficiently as we did because I had spent so much time podcasting before. And so having that knowledge and knowing what it takes to launch a show where I've seen my own shows fail, where I've seen my own shows be successful, and say, okay, well, let's just make sure we don't make those mistakes. I think even early on, we had a little bit of luck as well, because after 2 years, we had to deal with the COVID pandemic. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we were quite, I want to say full-time, Johnny, at that point. I feel like we were pretty close to having it be like a full production day paid for by patrons. But I remember pulling you aside and saying, like, look, this is an unfortunate global situation. I don't want to make light of it, but there's going to be a lot of people at home that are going to need something to do. If we can just put the pedal to the floor here and make sure that we don't miss a week, we stay on our game and really push forward, we essentially have a captive audience and we could really get a foothold in. And that was always the challenge I found with podcasting when I was getting into it, was even if you do a quality show, like I really felt like Comics Coast to Coast was a fantastic podcast, but it was a lot of work and it was so difficult to kind of get it into people's weekly routine and try to drum up that support. We had a little bit, but it was mostly just like a fun thing that people would do. And it didn't have the clause that I think Minecraft and a Minecraft podcast had to be able to get into the weekly routine for people to have it be something that they would listen to all the time and affect kind of like what they were doing outside of it. And I think having that opportunity with the pandemic and with my previous knowledge of podcasting, I think it really helped strengthen our position when we started the Spawn Chunks.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys are
smart.
We'll get back to the Spawn Chunks a little bit, because that growth that you were talking about, that it's difficult in the beginning, right? To get the word out, especially for podcasts. It kind of has to happen. It feels like it has to happen. And maybe this is something that you guys can help us out, because you've been in the game way longer than we have, but it does feel like getting growth in a podcast is almost relying on word of mouth. I mean, there is some SEO things, I suppose, but it doesn't feel like the same SEO that we were used to from the YouTube world to where now we're just hoping that we generate a buzz about the podcast and people start talking. And because we post on YouTube, we are kind of, hoping to leverage that algorithm a little bit to put us in front of people. But as you're starting out something new, like the Spawn Chunks, I mean, it could be a lot of work. And was there ever a time when you're like, well, this maybe isn't growing as fast as we were hoping? Was there ever any doubt that this would get to the point to where it is now? And alongside that, where are you guys looking to go in the future with it? Does it feel like you have an upward trajectory that feels pretty good to you? Or how are you feeling now this far into this many episodes into the show?
I think we're pretty stable at this point. We are not seeing the kind of newbie gains that you see when something first becomes popular and a lot of people start to talk about it. We saw pretty substantial growth, I want to say, for the first 4 years, to the point where Johnny and I were like, we've run out of like bonus stuff to do, like, the render distance and the monthly hangouts, and we've kind of reached the point where we can actually donate more time to this, and that happened quite quickly. I feel like we've been at a steady click now for a good year or two. We've seen growth, but it's not as dramatic as it was when it first started. And we also see the same ebb and flow that YouTubers will see. Like we were just talking about this on the quarterly this morning. The Q3 numbers are a little bit down because like a lot of people in the Northern Hemisphere are taking summer vacation. And there's also the rush of getting back to school at the end of August and early September, depending on what country you're in. So there's just not a lot of podcast engagement at that point because there's just a lot going on in people's lives. Once winter starts to come in and people are spending more time inside and more time listening to media and all that kind of stuff, we'll see the same uptick, closer to Christmas, which is nice, for us. But for the longest time, we didn't see that flow. We just kind of saw like the steady growth. I don't know if there's been much for challenges as far as like meeting expectations, because I went into this like, I'm playing this game a lot. And I'm going to have to try to monetize it somehow to justify the amount of time that I'm spending in this game. So, and right now, what I know how to monetize is a podcast. So, like, we're going to try this and really hope the spaghetti sticks to the wall, so I can justify the hours that I'm spending in Minecraft, so I can talk about it. And so that so far has been the case, which is nice. Johnny, like, where do you see the podcast going? Like, what do you think are good metrics for us to kind of work towards?
I still want to do a live stage show at any point. Like that's kind of the main thing that I think is still on our to-do list. Like still one of the, we were talking about Patreon took away the ability to add like milestones to a campaign a while ago, but that was all of the stuff that our community unlocked, was like the email focused show, the fact that we could have hangouts with people, we could spend a bit more time because the show had a bit more financial support. The last goal on that list really was paying for travel so that we could go to conventions and stuff. And then that just never happened because of the pandemic. But yeah, like I'd still love to do something like that. I'm always reminded when discussions like this come up of a guy I watched streaming, I think Marvel Snap of all things, There's a guy called Jeff Hoogland, who's like a big Marvel Snap content creator. And a lot of people at the time were yelling about how the newer cards and the stuff they were adding to Marvel Snap were not going to like bring new people into the game. And he said something I will never forget. He said, guys, I know that capitalism has poisoned us into thinking that anything that does not experience constant growth is dying, but that is not the case. And like, as long as we are stable, we are good. Like, you can start to talk about things like that when things appear to be dropping off, when, like, your player averages is lower, or, like, in our case, our view average plummeting for, like, however long. If nobody seems like they are listening or engaging with this in any way, maybe then it's time to call it a day. But until that day comes, we are good, and you don't have to worry about it being a constant growth. Like, sustainability is such an underrated concept in anything online, just because of how much we are conditioned to think of everything as being constantly a game of growth. And so that's sort of how I feel about there you go, food for thought.
I need that. I needed to hear that.
Yeah,
what that was. Yeah.
That's how I feel about my YouTube channel right now as well. Like, I've taken a bit of a break from producing Survival Guide for a while. Like, I've been just doing stuff on Twitch because we started this fun fantasy modded SMP that was just a stream-only thing. And I can only really concentrate on one big Minecraft thing at a time, so I kind of dedicated myself to that, wasn't making YouTube videos, and my YouTube stuff has just dropped off, but it'll be there for me. I'll be back, you know? Like, I think a lot of people immediately assume that something is dying if you don't hear from it for a while, and it's like, sometimes it's good to just relax, and if you know something is sustainable, you can come back to it, and it can still be healthy. And I think that's how I feel about the podcast. Like, we started in that era of growth when Joel and I were just doing it as a hobby, and like hobbyists turned jobs is what we're all so familiar with as like an environment that we're working in. But the fact that you start to panic a little bit when you see the numbers not continuing to grow is a sign that we need to rethink the way we consider these things. Are they sustainable, or is the goal just to keep growing it? And then what? Like, there will naturally come a point at which it cannot grow anymore, and that's when all 8 billion people in the planet listen to our podcast, and there is nowhere to go from there except to feed it into the incubators as the babies are born. Like, I don't see why we can't just be happy with, you know, sustainability and being like at a point where we know that things are going to spread naturally. You talked about like word of mouth earlier. Like, at the end of basically every podcast and even every like hangout that we do that just gets published to patrons, Joel says, sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. Word of mouth is the way that most podcasts get any kind of publicity, unless they're the kind of podcast who are already big enough to be spending advertising budget on something, or they're like a bigger production that's like a BBC podcast or something like that, at which point they have the marketing budget of an enormous corporation behind them and they can kind of do whatever they want to get the word out there. But this is Minecraft. Everything about Minecraft has been community focused from day one. Word of mouth is how this game has spread, and it's how anything related to the game spreads too. Like, yes, the YouTube algorithm helps by like putting videos in front of people occasionally, but again, there are so many videos that you're playing the lottery every time if you're relying on that. So what do you rely on? Your community, a connection to them, word of mouth, and goodwill. And that's really all you can rely on at that point if you want sustainable growth. Like, it's the reason that everyone scoffs at any time you get somebody come into your Twitch chat that's like botting and says, you know, go to this link to buy viewers and subscribers and whatnot. It's like, but that doesn't mean anything, because none of those people are actually going to be real people watching you in their rooms and contributing in any way. And like, that stuff just feels so empty and fake, that what you want is somebody genuine and somebody real, which I think, going back to what Skizz said earlier about us bringing humanity to the show, that's what we're pitching the show to, is human beings. Yeah. And like, there's no way you could do it without
That's
them.
why it's so well accepted. That's why it was so easy to listen to, because it felt like when you guys were speaking Minecraft, it felt more like you guys were talking about Minecraft with me. Even though I was just listening, it felt like you were talking about Minecraft with me. Whereas some of the tutorials, and I'm not dogging on any of them, there's so many people do amazing tutorials, but it's a lot of talking at me, right? It's a lot of just drink from this fire hose. Here's the information that you came to. We're not here to think. You're just here to listen to what I'm saying, and here's the information. It's helpful. I get it, but there was something so much more warm about the actual podcast. 'Cause like I said, it felt like we were all in the same room. I wasn't talking, I was just listening, but it felt like we were talking Minecraft together. So I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna tell you once again how grateful I am for the time that you brought to us today and gave us today. And we're gonna do something here. This is not fair. Impulse has no idea that I'm gonna and
he knows I hate it when he springs.
He hates it when I
on me.
spring stuff on him, and which makes me love it. And I never knew. I didn't think I was gonna. It was halfway through the podcast. I'm like, oh, I think I know something I'd like to do. I want to do a 2-minute Spawn Chunk segment with all 4 of us. Is that okay? Can we do that? We're gonna talk Minecraft for a second, and I have a topic. I have a specific topic.
Hell yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I wonder.
Need to sit up.
I'll be honest. I don't know. I mean, you got 317 episodes. I have to wonder if you guys have covered this. But something about Minecraft that has always fascinated me is the Foley arts that are used, the sound effects, right? All the different sound effects that they use to get across what's going on. And sometimes my brain goes to places where I'm like, how did they get that, right? So like, I want you to conjure up, and I'll do this in post. I'll put the sound in, but conjure up, if you will, the sound of punching a villager. Okay, it just came into your brain, and I just played it, so the audience just heard it. What? Did they slug a guy in the gut? Did they put somebody in? You know what I mean? What? How did they get that sound? What? Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, whenever they've given us, like, they've shown us a couple of insider looks at the audio production process recently. Like, Samuel Orberg has a video on the Minecraft YouTube channel that's great about like how they designed some stuff. They actually remade a bunch of Minecraft sounds from a completely soundless set of footage that they were given. Really fascinating video. If you haven't seen it, I recommend looking it up. They also had a segment in Minecraft Live this year where one of the other sound artists was talking about how she put together the sounds for the creaking, which is like a lot of layered stuff. So like there's like twigs breaking naturally, like it's kind of associated with the mob, but anything wooden, she was like, I found these like Swedish snacks that are just like little breadsticks and I broke them. And then I like dragged my table across the room to record the sound of the wood scraping against the floor. And so it's a lot of layers. And so I think what they've done is, for a start, the sound effect of the punch is like a generic punching an entity, so that's kind of layered over the top of the villager. A lot of the villagers are just, I think, people sitting in a booth kind of going, like
Wait,
over and over
that
again,
was you?
and just seeing what. I mean, I wish. God, can you imagine the royalties? Like, imagine the residuals you'd get from being Minecraft villager. But like the Element Animations guys do this all the time and do it fantastically well. But like, I imagine what they've done there is layered like a couple of vocalizations, a couple of just like easy mouth sounds that they've gone "pah" or something, and like that's the sound of a villager getting hit, and then you have the really percussive like thwack of you hitting, like the same sound that happens when you hit a cow or a pig or whatever. And they've just layered those up and maybe done a little bit of audio processing behind the scenes, but that's probably what it is like a couple of sounds that are made with your mouth. Like even the Samuel Orberg video, he does a lot of the piglin sounds, a lot of like the squeals and the angry piglin noises. And I genuinely looked around in case I was in the nether when he did that, because like fantastically well done, right? But yeah, that's what I've seen them do.
Okay,
crazy.
You ready for the next one? Now you conjure up this sound. Here it comes. A dying horse. Okay, we all just conjured it up, and the audience just heard it. It is the worst one. How did they get that one? I don't even want to think about it, but my brain can't stop because that one is too visceral for me.
Joel, you ever heard a horse die?
I have not ever heard a horse die, nor do I want to. I think part of the reason it's so horrible is because I don't imagine that noise is great in real life, and there's a lot of horse lovers out there, and I think that would be in part to discourage people from killing horses in Minecraft. I'm surprised you can. Actually, to be honest with you, I kind of thought that might be a mob that they just maybe you could punch the horse and the horse would kick you back and that would be the end of it. Yeah. You know, I don't know why they let you actually kill them in the game. I've never done it on purpose. I feel like there might have been a fire one time, but I digress. I think that kind of thing is probably, I mean, I hesitate to say maybe like a library of sounds. I don't think they would have put any animals in distress,
of course not.
to get that, you know. So I feel like there has to be something. It could be something else. It could be like a pig squealing that they've changed, or a couple of other animals that they've layered. knowing that they like to layer stuff. I don't think it would be something as simple as a villager getting punched. Although I like your idea of someone getting punched in the gut for the villager thing. Though for that, it's those bike horns, like the silver bike horns with the little rubber stop on it.
Yeah.
If you had that under your shirt and then that is what got punched, like that would sort of track for that. But no, the horse thing, I think the assignment was probably like, look, sound designer, you need to make this as horrible and as like nails on a chalkboard-esque as you can.
Yeah,
mission accomplished. I think they did it.
Yeah.
We know they've gotten
I don't know how
they've gotten very creative with how they've gotten a lot of sounds. Like we know the gas sound was from one of the developers' cats making a noise that he just happened to capture. So they've come up with the ways of getting
The
sounds.
ghast?
Yeah,
It's a cat?
yeah, it's a cat.
What?
You didn't know that?
Dude,
Dude, that's like Minecraft trivia.
that
Like,
cat must have been. What the
Yeah,
heck
yeah.
was the cat
Yeah.
up to? That sound is awful.
There was in the video Samuel Orbug did. He even said that like the legacy of cat sounds being actual recordings of cats continues. Like his cat has contributed a few sound effects to Minecraft recently. So yeah, like you'd be surprised. Like sound designers reach to all kinds of weird places to get sounds for that stuff. And like, you think about the Warden and like you can't, there's no sort of supernatural entity that we can go out and take field recordings of, right? But they've done that for pandas. They've done it for goats. Like they have footage of them going to, I think, even to China to record pandas in their like natural environment and do field recordings of those. So some of them are legit, and others are, clearly recreations of what they think this should sound like, or even, like Joel said, deterrents to players. To if you punch a ghast, it makes the most appalling screeching noise, and you're like, I try my best to one-shot ghasts wherever possible, just so I don't have to hear them yelling more.
So, okay, you shoot a guy, you punch a ghast, it makes that noise. That's not a cat, right?
no, I think it's the one that you always said was like the gas saying Gertrude.
Yeah,
I think that's the one of the. Yeah,
that's not it can't be a cat.
That's the one of the cat, I believe.
I have a theory that Enderman have been saying warped wart this entire time, and that was before the Nether update. And so when the Nether update came in and introduced that block, they were like, "We found it," and that's why there's Enderman everywhere in warped.
Yeah, there you go. They've been talking about this all along. We should have picked up on that.
Well, what's funny, if you think about a dying Enderman, that sound, that could be a version of the dying horse. It's got sort of the same, not frequency, but it's sort of a same cadence of waves on a different frequency type thing. You know what I mean? There's something similar about the two noises. It's naturally, I think a lot of it's synthetic, and I understand that, but it's just always fascinated me because we just take that stuff for granted.
Yeah.
We take that stuff for granted when you watch a normal movie. You know what I mean? When somebody walks across and you can hear their footsteps, you think that the mics didn't pick that up. That was a guy in some studio hitting a banana on a cutting board. So it's like the stuff is, it fascinates me. So I've always wondered that about that. And like I said, 317 episodes. I don't know if you guys have ever done one on Foley Arts, but that's why I just wanted to do that little exercise. That was fun. Thank you for being so cool about it. That was a lot of fun to do.
Episode 319 will be all about Minecraft sounds.
Yeah.
We'll invite Skizz on and have him re-record some of the Minecraft sound library with us. And just
That's
be
what
like,
we need. We need a
hey,
Skizzleman resource pack where he's replaced every sound in the game with his own his own sound.
Oh my gosh. Have you ever played with the Element Animations Villager Sounds resource
it's
pack?
hilarious.
It's what an experience. It's like the guy who, like, whoever it is who does the voices of the villagers, like from the same ones who do the animated short that was on Minecraft Live, but they are saying the name of all of the sound effects instead of trying to make the sounds. So you walk around on grass blocks and he's going, grass, 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 stone, stone. And then like you go near lava and it's like, I'm lava, don't come near me, or something like that. It's so good. They've done such a fantastic job. I played that once with a resource pack that also removed all textures, made all of the blocks white, but wrote the name of the block across it. God. And so you're walking around seeing the word stone over and over again and hearing stone, stone, and then you see a cow and it's just a white box with cow written on it. And it's surreal. Like this, how could we not have 317 episodes of a podcast when there's so many ways to play this game?
Very good. So there we go. So this is I do have one or more question for you, because for some reason through all the talking, I didn't quite pick it up. You guys, do you record? So you release on Mondays, right? Or wait, what day do you release on Mondays? You also said you record on Mondays. So do you record a week ahead of time?
Nope, same day.
How? That's what I thought they were getting at. I'm like, is that really? we're
That's
blowing it.
That's why Impulse said we start super early in the morning for folks on the American coasts, and it's like that's 10 a.m. for Joel, so that's like the full day of recording, edit, post, publish, all of that stuff.
Wow, I've always
knock it out.
You know what's funny? It's the only time I've done. So what we'll typically do is record 2 or 3 episodes in one sitting, and then we have them queued up, and I edit as time goes by. And at one time, I had to edit 2 episodes in one day, and it was the day we recorded them because I was about to travel. That was a heavy lift.
Yeah.
So the fact that you guys have this consistent record and edit and release on that day, what? That's amazing. There's no wiggle room for error in that, dude. There's wow, that's impressive.
Don't get sick that day.
Yeah. Don't have tech problems that day.
Yeah. Tech issues, those are fun.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much. We've got a long time here, but it's been absolutely great conversation. I think what I'd like to do before we wrap up here is we've talked a lot about the Spawn Chunks, but I want to make sure that everybody knows how to find you guys.
Yes.
So obviously we'll put links to like everything you guys do that we can, and in the description, of course. But if you could at least let everybody know where they can find the Spawn Chunks and how to consume your content. I'll give you the floor right now, and you can get that word out that we talked about.
Joel, take it away.
Well, we publish every Monday across all of your favorite podcasting platforms. So it doesn't matter whether it's Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, we're available everywhere. If you are looking for the video version, obviously that is on YouTube. You can find us on social media at the Spawn Chunks. We're on Twitter or X and on Instagram. So if you rely on those for when you see new episodes, you'll know that comes out after the show's been published, because I do the social media after we've published the episode. So if you see the post, you know that there's a new episode available. I'm at Joel Duggan across everything. So if you want to find me on Twitter or Twitch, then that's the best place to find me. Joel Duggan VODs on YouTube, because I don't actually have edited YouTube content. I just post my VODs from Twitch on there. Johnny, where can people find you and everything that you're doing online?
I'm trying to remember what my outro is for the show. Oh yeah, my name is Johnny. The internet knows me as Pixelriffs. You can find most of what I do at youtube.com/Pixelriffs, where the Minecraft Survival Guide is currently in its 3rd season. I also stream 3 days a week on Twitch, where I do behind-the-scenes work for my YouTube channel. And I'm the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search, because our official URL for that, I think, is still Foolcraft Recap, because we started the channel and then transferred a bunch of videos. It was a weird, messy time. Anyway, aside from that, I'm at Pixelriffs on both Twitter and Instagram.
I feel like you guys have done that before.
Yeah, that was...
only 317 plus times now.
That was really polished.
Fantastic, guys.
Yeah, it's a well-oiled machine.
Well, thank you again for spending your time with us today. Love your podcasts. Obviously, I've been on it a few times, which has been an absolute pleasure. So obviously, I'll raise my hand, willing to come back anytime you want to take a vacation, or either one of you, or if you want to just have me on, I'd be happy to join you guys on your show again. Yeah. And I know, Skizz, this is the first time that you've got a chance to get familiar with the Spawn Chunks podcast. Yep. And
delightful. This is an honor. Have you guys, I don't know if we covered, have you guys actually ever met in real life?
Nope.
Oh,
nope.
Wow.
Still no.
Oh, wow.
That has to happen, man.
Yeah.
You guys
would have happened by now, but like I said, life got in the way a little bit.
Well, hopefully there's like a TwitchCon in the future that you guys can be at. We are going to be at probably several in the future. So I'd personally like to have the opportunity to meet you guys in person. But if I met one of you before you guys met each other, that's just not right.
I thought it was gonna. I was wondering that, because Pixel came out to like California a couple months ago or whenever it was, and I was like, I'm like a 5-hour drive away from where he's chilling. I could go meet him like pretty easily. And I was like, nah, Joel would kill me. So, no, absolute pleasure. Thanks again, guys. I know it's getting late in your day, Pixel, so we'll let you get back to things. But it's been great having you. Thanks so much.
Really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
What a treat. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
You bet. See you guys later.